I've never been much of a planner. Sometimes, when life gets a little too heavy, I just get in my car and drive. No destination in mind, no plan, just me and the open road. It's a habit I've picked up over the years, helps me clear my head. That night, though, it didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. A lot worse. It had been a long day. One of those days where everything seems to go wrong all at once. I got into an argument with my boss, my girlfriend, and I were on the rocks, and I was feeling more stressed than usual. So I grabbed my keys, jumped in the car, and started driving. It was late, probably close to midnight, but I didn't care. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so. No cars, no people, just me and the road. After about an hour of driving aimlessly, I started to feel that familiar sense of peace creeping in. The headlights from my car cut through the darkness, and for a moment, everything felt right again. I didn't know where I was, and that was fine by me. Eventually, I found myself in a small, quiet parking lot on the edge of town. There wasn't much around, just a couple of old buildings, maybe an abandoned warehouse or two. It looked like the kind of place no one bothered with anymore. The parking lot was empty, and the only light came from a flickering street lamp in the distance. It was perfect, quiet, secluded, just what I needed. I parked the car, turned off the engine, and leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes for a moment. The air was cool, and the night was dead silent. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how nice it was to just sit there without a single worry in the world. That peace didn't last long. I don't know how long I had my eyes closed, maybe a minute, maybe 5. But when I opened them, I noticed something strange. My body felt heavy. At first, I thought I was just tired. Maybe I'd been driving longer than I realized, and my body was telling me it was time to go home. But then I tried to move, and I couldn't. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't lift my legs. My entire body was frozen in like I was glued to the seat. I tried to panic, to scream, to call out for help, but nothing came out. It was like my body had been shut down, like someone had flipped a switch and turned me off. The only thing I could move were my eyes, darting back and forth, trying to make sense of what was happening. That's when the lights came. At first, it was just a small flicker of light off in the distance, like someone had turned on a flashlight. But then it grew, brighter, closer, until it filled the entire parking lot. Blinding white light, so bright it hurt to look at. It was coming from above, from every direction, like I was surrounded. I wanted to run. I wanted to get the hell out of there. But I was stuck, completely paralyzed, helpless. My heart was racing and my mind was screaming, but my body wouldn't respond. I was trapped in my own skin, and then, through the light, I saw them. Figures, moving around the car. At first, I thought they were just people, maybe police or construction workers or something. But as the light shifted, I realized these weren't people. They were different. Their bodies were long and thin, almost skeletal, and their heads were too big for their bodies, like they were wearing oversized masks. I couldn't make out their faces, just shadowy outlines moving closer, surrounding the car. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. All I could do was watch as they got closer and closer, circling the car like predators. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it. This couldn't be real. It had to be a dream, a nightmare. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. Too real. One of them stepped forward, closer to the driver's side window. It was taller than the others, its long, thin fingers reaching up and tapping on the glass. I could see it more clearly now, its face, or whatever you want to call it. Its eyes were huge, black and unblinking, staring right into mine. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. The door handle rattled. Then, without a sound, the door opened. Whatever it was, reached inside the car with those impossibly long fingers and touched my arm. The skin was cold, clammy, almost like it was dead. I wanted to pull away, to fight back, but I couldn't move. My entire body was frozen, like I was trapped inside a nightmare. It reached for my hair, gently pulling a few strands free. I could feel it, the soft tug as it plucked the hairs from my head, studying them. And then it did something that made my blood run cold. It reached for my soda. I'd left the cup in the cup holder, half empty, with a straw sticking out of the top. The thing, This creature picked it up, staring at it like it was trying to understand what it was. Then slowly, it brought the straw to its mouth and took a sip. I don't know why, but that was the moment I realized how real this was. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a hallucination. This thing was in my car, drinking from my soda, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The others circled the car, peering in through the windows, their eyes unblinking, their movements slow and deliberate. One of them reached through the passenger side window, brushing its fingers across my dashboard like it was searching for something. Another was standing at the back of the car, its face pressed up against the rear window, watching me. And then the tall one leaned closer. Its face was inches from mine now, its dark, empty eyes staring right into me. I could feel its breath, cold like the air in a freezer on my skin. It reached out, touching my face, and for a brief moment, I thought it was going to kill me, but instead it just looked at me, studied me, and then, without warning, it slapped me. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to snap me out of whatever trance I was in. The second its hand made contact with my face, everything changed. The light disappeared, the figures vanished, and I was back, sitting in my car, alone in the parking lot. I gasped for air, my heart racing, my body drenched in sweat. I looked around, half expecting to see them still there, but the parking lot was empty. The street lamp was still flickering in the distance, the quiet of the night had returned, and everything looked exactly as it had before. I looked down at my cup, still sitting in the cup holder, the soda untouched. My hair was fine, no strands missing. It was like nothing had ever happened. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined the whole thing, that maybe I'd fallen asleep in the car and had some crazy nightmare. But then I touched my face and I felt it, the sting. My cheek was red, warm to the touch. It had slapped me. I don't know how long I sat there, staring out the window, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. The parking lot stayed quiet, the lights stayed off, and I was alone again. I started the car and drove home, my hands shaking the entire way. I didn't tell anyone about what happened that night. Not my friends, not my family. I mean, who would believe me? I wasn't even sure if I believed myself. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. They were real. And they were watching me. I don't drive around aimlessly anymore. I don't go looking for quiet places to park, and I definitely don't go back to that lot. I haven't been back since that night, and I never plan to, because I know, somewhere out there, they're still watching, waiting, and I'm not about to give them a second chance.